Westeros isn't just a continent of warring families, it's a patchwork of radically different cultures that have adapted to some of the harshest environments imaginable. From the frozen wasteland of the north to the scorching deserts of Dorne, these people have developed survival strategies so extreme, they make our most hardcore survivalists look like tourists at a resort. Today, I'm breaking down the 8 most mind-blowing cultural adaptations across Westeros that explain why these people fight, fuck, and survive the way they do. And trust me, when you learn about adaptation number 5, you'll understand why the Dothraki would absolutely demolish a modern military in their home territory. Before we dive into these cultural adaptations, we need to understand something crucial about the world of Game of Thrones. It's a place of environmental extremes that have shaped every aspect of society. The famous Stark words, "Winter is coming," aren't just a cool catchphrase. They're a deadly serious warning about a world where seasons can last for years. In our world, cultures adapt to stable, predictable environments. In Westeros, they have to survive conditions that swing between brutal extremes, with resources that would be considered medieval at best. This has forced each region to develop unique cultural adaptations that go far beyond just wearing different clothes or eating different foods. I've analyzed the complete history and geography of the 7 kingdoms to identify the 8 most significant cultural adaptations that explain why these societies function the way they do. These aren't just interesting cultural quirks, they're survival mechanisms that have allowed these people to endure in environments that would kill most of us within days. So let's explore the 8 most fascinating cultural adaptations from across Westeros, and what they tell us about survival in the world of Game of Thrones. Northern Winterfell engineering, heat circulation in a frozen wasteland. The north isn't just cold, it experiences winters that can last for years, with temperatures so extreme that exposed skin freezes in minutes. Yet the Starks have survived in Winterfell for 8,000 years, through winters that have wiped out entire communities elsewhere. How? Through one of the most ingenious heating systems ever devised in a pre-industrial society. Winterfell isn't just built on top of natural hot springs by accident. The castle's walls contain a complex network of hollow spaces through which hot water is circulated from the springs below. This creates what is essentially ancient radiant heating, keeping the castle habitable even in the deepest winter. Bran Stark explains in the books that the hot springs heated Winterfell, and steam rose from the earth, hot as a man's breath, even in the dead of winter. This isn't just a luxury. It's the difference between life and death during the years-long winters. What makes this adaptation particularly impressive is that it was supposedly designed by Bran the Builder over 8,000 years ago, long before such engineering should have been possible. The Starks didn't just adapt to their environment through cultural practices, they literally engineered a solution that has kept their family alive for millennia. This adaptation explains why Winterfell is so strategically important beyond just its political position. During the harshest winters, it becomes one of the few truly habitable places in the north. Whoever controls Winterfell controls survival itself when winter comes. The brutal truth is that without this adaptation, human civilization in the north would be impossible during the long winters. The Starks' ability to create a microclimate within their castle walls is what allowed them to establish and maintain power in a region that should be uninhabitable for half its history. Iron Islands raiding culture, surviving on rocks through predation. The Iron Islands are perhaps the most resource-poor region in all of Westeros, a collection of rocky, windswept islands with thin soil, few trees, and minimal agricultural potential. By all logic, these islands should support only a tiny population of fishermen struggling to survive. Instead, they've produced one of the most feared cultures in Westeros through a radical cultural adaptation: institutionalized raiding. The Ironborn don't just raid because they're violent by nature, they raid because their environment gives them no choice. Their entire culture is built around the concept of the iron price, taking what you need by force rather than trading for it. As Balon Greyjoy tells Theon, "We are Ironborn. We're not subjects, we're not slaves. We do not plow the field or toil in the mine. We take what is ours." This isn't just bravado, it's a survival strategy. The Iron Islands cannot produce enough food to support their population through farming or fishing alone. Raiding isn't just cultural, it's ecological. What makes this adaptation particularly interesting is how it's been ritualized into a religion. The Drowned God's teachings explicitly support raiding, with the afterlife imagined as an eternal feast hall where brave raiders are rewarded. This religious justification transforms what would otherwise be simple banditry into a sacred duty. The longships of the Ironborn are another crucial part of this adaptation. These ships are designed specifically for raiding, shallow drafted to navigate rivers and beaches, fast enough to outrun larger vessels, and simple enough to be built with the limited timber available on the islands. The controversial truth is that the Ironborn's evil culture is actually a rational adaptation to an environment that offers no other path to survival. In a resource-rich environment, their culture would be maladaptive and destructive. In the Iron Islands, it's the only way to survive. Dornish sexual openness, genetic diversity in an isolated desert. Dorne's sexual liberality isn't just a quirky cultural difference. It's a sophisticated adaptation to the genetic challenges of living in an isolated, harsh desert environment. Unlike the rest of Westeros, Dorne embraces sexual freedom, legitimizes bastards, and allows women equal inheritance rights. From a biological perspective, this makes perfect sense. Dorne is separated from the rest of Westeros by mountains and desert, creating a relatively isolated gene pool. In such conditions, genetic diversity becomes crucial to prevent the problems of inbreeding that plague other noble houses. Looking at you, Targaryens. By accepting paramours, official lovers outside of marriage, legitimizing bastards, and generally taking a more relaxed view of sexuality, the Dornish ensure a constant flow of new genetic material through their population. This isn't just progressive politics, it's evolutionary strategy. Prince Oberyn Martell embodies this adaptation perfectly. His bisexuality, multiple paramours, and 8 bastard daughters, the Sand Snakes, aren't just character traits. They're demonstrations of the Dornish approach to ensuring genetic diversity and alliance building through sexual connections. What makes this adaptation particularly effective is how it's been formalized into law and custom. Dornish law allows the eldest child to inherit regardless of gender, recognizes the rights of bastards, and doesn't stigmatize sexual behavior the way other regions do. These aren't just social differences, they're legal frameworks that support genetic diversity. The brutal truth is that the Dornish approach to sexuality is objectively more healthy from a genetic standpoint than the rigid monogamy and legitimacy obsession of the other kingdoms. The Lannisters, Targaryens, and other houses that practice close intermarriage show increasing signs of genetic problems while the Dornish remain vibrant and healthy. Adaptation number 4. Wildling nomadic structures, surviving beyond the wall. The Wildlings, or Free Folk as they call themselves, live in the harshest environment in Westeros. Beyond the wall, where winters are longest and most severe, resources are scarce, and threats include not just starvation but White Walkers and other supernatural dangers. Their most crucial adaptation isn't a technology but a social structure, radical decentralization. Unlike the hierarchical feudal system of the Seven Kingdoms, the Wildlings organize themselves into small, mobile bands led by chiefs who maintain power only as long as they can demonstrate value to the group. As Mance Rayder explains to Jon Snow, the Free Folk don't follow titles or last names or rich lords. We follow strength. We follow the man. This isn't primitive tribalism. It's a sophisticated adaptation to an environment where centralization would be fatal. In the extreme conditions beyond the wall, a rigid hierarchy like that of the Seven Kingdoms would collapse immediately. If resources must be allocated to maintaining a lord's status regardless of his competence, people die. If people cannot move quickly to follow game or avoid threats, people die. If leadership cannot change rapidly when circumstances demand it, people die. What makes this adaptation particularly interesting is how it's been misinterpreted by those south of the Wall. The Night's Watch and the Northerners see the Wildlings as savages without proper civilization. In reality, their social structure is precisely calibrated to their environment, more sophisticated in its way than the rigid feudalism of the Seven Kingdoms. The controversial truth is that the Wildlings' primitive culture is actually more meritocratic and adaptable than the supposedly advanced society of Westeros proper. In the extreme environment beyond the wall, feudalism would be a death sentence, not a sign of civilization. Dothraki horse culture, mastering the Great Grass Sea. The Dothraki aren't just good with horses. They've evolved a symbiotic relationship with them that transforms both human and animal into something greater than the sum of their parts. Their entire culture is built around this relationship, to the point where their language has no word for thank you, but dozens of words describing different types of horses and riding techniques. From birth, Dothraki children are exposed to horses. They learn to ride before they can walk, and by adulthood, they can shoot arrows with deadly accuracy while hanging off the side of a galloping horse. This isn't just skill, it's a lifetime of neural development specifically optimized for mounted combat. As Jorah Mormont explains to Daenerys, the Dothraki follow strength above all. No Khalasar would follow a weak Khal. And in Dothraki culture, strength is defined primarily by horsemanship. Their leaders aren't chosen for bloodlines or wealth, but for their ability to embody the perfect union between human and horse. What makes this adaptation particularly effective is how it's been ritualized into every aspect of culture. Dothraki weddings feature public sex and multiple deaths because these demonstrate fertility and strength, the two qualities most needed for survival on the plains. Their nomadic lifestyle follows the natural migration patterns of the horses they depend on. The most disturbing aspect of this adaptation is how completely it has shaped Dothraki morality. Actions that seem horrific to outsiders, raiding, rape, slavery, are logical extensions of a culture built around mounted warfare. A horse-centered nomadic lifestyle requires mobility, which means wealth must be portable, slaves, gold, rather than fixed, land buildings. The brutal truth is that in open field combat, a Dothraki horde would absolutely annihilate any army from the Seven Kingdoms, and possibly even modern military units unfamiliar with their tactics. Their entire neural development from childhood is optimized for mounted warfare in a way that can't be matched by someone who learns to ride as an adult. Vale Mountain Clans, tribal survival in vertical territory. The mountain clans of the Vale represent one of the most extreme cultural adaptations in Westeros, groups that have maintained their independence for thousands of years despite being surrounded by one of the most powerful kingdoms. These clans, the Black Ears, Burned Men, Stone Crows, and others, survive in the Mountains of the Moon, a harsh vertical environment with minimal resources. Their adaptation isn't technological but social, extreme tribalism combined with ritualized violence. The Burned Men, for example, require young men to burn off a body part as an initiation rite. The more important the body part, the more respect earned. This isn't mindless savagery. It's a sophisticated screening mechanism that ensures only the most committed individuals gain influence in a resource-scarce environment. As Shagga, son of Dolph, demonstrates in his interactions with Tyrion, the mountain clans have developed a culture where personal strength, oath-keeping, and direct action are valued above all else. In the mountains, where agriculture is nearly impossible and hunting grounds are limited, this ensures that only those who contribute directly to group survival maintain status. What makes this adaptation particularly effective is how it's allowed these clans to resist absorption into Vale society for thousands of years. Despite repeated attempts by House Arryn to pacify the mountains, the clans have maintained their independence through a combination of guerrilla tactics, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and a culture that makes them willing to accept enormous hardship rather than submit. The controversial truth is that the mountain clan's primitive culture is actually a sophisticated adaptation to an environment where integration with the feudal system would be suicidal. Their tribalism isn't a failure to advance. It's a deliberate strategy that has kept them alive and independent while larger, more civilized groups have been conquered or destroyed. Crenogman guerrilla tactics surviving in the Neck. The Crenogmen of the Neck, led by House Reed, have developed perhaps the most extreme environmental adaptation in all of Westeros. Living in the swampy, treacherous region between the north and the south, they've evolved a culture that turns their hostile environment into an impenetrable defense. Unlike conventional armies that rely on direct confrontation, the Crenogmen practice a form of guerrilla warfare perfectly adapted to their swampy home. They use blowguns with poisoned darts, move silently through terrain that would swallow conventional forces, and know the secret paths through the otherwise impassable swamps. As Mira Reed demonstrates in her protection of Bran Stark, the Crenogmen are trained from childhood in skills that would be useless elsewhere but are essential in the Neck: how to move silently through water, how to identify poisonous plants, how to disappear into the landscape at a moment's notice. What makes this adaptation particularly fascinating is how it's allowed a physically small people to defend their territory against much larger forces. The Crenogmen are described as being smaller than average Westerosi, yet they've successfully defended the Neck against southern invasions for thousands of years. Their most impressive adaptation is Greywater Watch, the moving castle of House Reed. Unlike the fixed stone fortresses of other houses, Greywater Watch is built on a floating island that constantly moves through the swamps, making it impossible to find without a guide. This isn't just a defensive strategy, it's a complete reimagining of what a castle can be, perfectly adapted to an environment where solid ground is rare. The brutal truth is that the Crenogmen's guerrilla tactics would be considered dishonorable or even cowardly by conventional Westerosi standards, but they're perfectly calibrated to their environment. In the swamps of the Neck, traditional warfare isn't just ineffective, it's suicidal. Night's Watch celibacy, preventing dynastic competition at the Wall. The Night's Watch's vow of celibacy isn't just a random restriction. It's a sophisticated social adaptation designed to prevent the exact kind of dynastic conflicts that repeatedly tear apart the Seven Kingdoms. By forbidding marriage and children, the Night's Watch ensures that no ranger or steward can establish a competing bloodline that might challenge the organization's mission. There are no sons of the Watch who might feel entitled to positions based on their father's status, no families to avenge if a brother is killed in the line of duty. As Maester Aemon demonstrated when he refused the crown during the Blackfyre Rebellion, this celibacy creates a true separation between the Watch and the political machinations of the realm. A man with no children has no dynasty to build, no legacy to protect except the Watch itself. What makes this adaptation particularly effective is how it's been ritualized into the very identity of the Watch. "I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children" isn't just a rule. It's part of the oath that defines what it means to be a brother of the Night's Watch. This transforms what could be seen as a sacrifice into a source of identity and pride. The most controversial aspect of this adaptation is how it fails in practice while succeeding in theory. As we see with the brothel at Molestown, many brothers break their vows of celibacy. However, the crucial element, preventing the creation of competing dynasties, remains intact because any children born from these encounters have no claim on the Watch. The brutal truth is that the Night's Watch's celibacy rule is less about sexual purity and more about preventing the same kind of bloodline politics that repeatedly destabilize the Seven Kingdoms. It's a recognition that humans will always favor their own children, and the only way to prevent this natural instinct from corrupting an institution is to forbid those children from existing in the first place. These 8 cultural adaptations reveal something profound about the world of Game of Thrones. It's not just a medieval fantasy setting, but a complex ecosystem where human cultures have evolved specific strategies to survive in environments that would kill most of us. From the ingenious heating system of Winterfell to the guerrilla tactics of the Crannogmen, these adaptations aren't just interesting cultural quirks. They're sophisticated survival mechanisms that explain why these societies function the way they do, why they fight the way they fight, and why they've endured for thousands of years in conditions that should be uninhabitable. What makes these adaptations particularly fascinating is how they blur our modern notions of advanced versus primitive cultures. The supposedly primitive Wildlings have developed a social structure that's actually more meritocratic and adaptable than the rigid feudalism of the Seven Kingdoms. The savage Dothraki have neural development optimized for mounted warfare in a way that would give them advantages even against modern soldiers. These adaptations also explain many of the conflicts we see throughout Game of Thrones. When cultures adapted to radically different environments come into contact, misunderstanding and conflict are inevitable. The Iron Islanders' raiding culture makes perfect sense in their resource-poor environment, but becomes destructive when applied to the mainland. The Dothraki's nomadic lifestyle is perfectly adapted to the Great Grass Sea, but creates havoc when they interact with settled populations. Understanding these cultural adaptations gives us a deeper appreciation for George R.R. Martin's world building. He hasn't just created different cultures for the sake of variety. He's created societies that make sense in their specific environments, with customs and practices that directly address the survival challenges they face. If you enjoyed this breakdown of cultural adaptations across Westeros, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which adaptation you find most fascinating, or which region of Westeros you think you'd be best adapted to survive in. This is Explainified, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the cultural adaptations of Westeros. If you want to learn more about the geography that shaped these cultures, check out my video on the most extreme environments in Game of Thrones, which I'll link right here. And don't forget to subscribe for more Game of Thrones explained videos coming every week. This is Explainified, and I'll see you in the next one.